Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty. Today's episode, I'm working on a layout process video for the Counterfeit Kit challenge. And the challenge is to be inspired by Disney or more broadly, fairy tales, cartoons, along those lines. So I'm actually going to talk about this book that I've been reading that is full of fairy tales. And it's a really touching story about a granddaughter and her very eccentric grandmother and how they share fairy tales together as a bigger plot point. So I'm using my Counterfeit Kit here, which I'm going through, and I'm finding lots of bits and pieces that have that whimsical feel to them. And I'm going to use this pencil paper as my background. And I'm pulling out other bits and pieces that I think will work, including this card that says My Happy Place, which is a big part of the story. This girl's happy place is with her grandmother, and it's also my happy place reading at night before I go to bed. So I've got this piece of pattern paper that has a lot of fairy tale kind of creatures on it. I've got this gnome paper that happened to be in my kit this month, and even though we know these challenges ahead of time as part of the design team when we're building our kits, I did not plan any of this. It just happened to work out quite nicely, so that's great. And I'm actually doing an 8.5 by 11 layout this time around. If you've been following me, you may know that I've mentioned that I want to do more 8.5 by 11, but it hasn't been something that I've actually done very much of yet. So here I am getting a start with this different size. And so as I do these bits and pieces, it's definitely a process for me to adjust to this different canvas size. So I did kind of get started on just a plain sheet of white paper before I moved over to using this pencil for sure as my background. And I am cutting these wavy borders onto these bits and pieces of pattern paper to give it a more whimsical feel to it. And I'm also going to take the opportunity to edge all of those wavy lines to kind of up that feel. And, you know, I wish I had, because I was focusing on the size of this layout so much, I hadn't quite focused on which of the pattern papers I was putting next to each other, and these two white prints end up next to each other, and so I wish I had kind of alternated things a bit more. But you know, that's how it goes when you're working. Sometimes you don't see the bigger picture as you're going along, and especially since I was trying to create these wavy lines, and I wasn't sure how all that was going to work out. So if I were to do this again, keeping in mind for the future to pay attention to pattern papers and how their tones go with each other, or don't in this case, too much white tone together there. At any rate, I did want to border those wavy strips with that bit of butterfly paper. And then I move on to adhering my photo, which is really just an internet picture of the book cover. And I'm double layering that up with foam tape because my title journal card is actually going to house a hidden journaling tag because 8.5 by 11 doesn't give me as much room as I'm used to. I didn't leave space for the journaling. So this little piece of that pattern paper has the white rabbit on it from Alice in Wonderland, and I thought, yes, another kind of fantasy element to add to this layout. So that's going to become the background to my journaling tag, and I am going to pull out some vellum from my stash in order to cover up that white rabbit so it's not quite so glaring, and that vellum will get some lines on it and will end up being my journaling. So I'm turning all of those pieces into a tag. I added a little hole punch from my favorite tag hole punch to both of those layers, and then in my kit I had all of these fibers, so I am adding multiple layers of fibers to create this little whimsical bow on my tag, and then giving it a fluff, and that will be for my journaling. And I pull out my favorite journaling line stamp, and then I realized I wanted on the top of this journaling tag to read story, so that it goes along with the book, and it also is my story, my journaling. But I didn't have that word on these gold letters, so I cut apart some other phrases to create that word, and I'll have some leftover letters to do something with in the future. So don't be afraid to cut apart your elements and embellishments to get what you need out of it. If nothing else, any of those leftover bits and pieces I put in a baggie and I donate them to my neighborhood kind of free cycling buy nothing group, and then kids get to play with them and have fun with it. So I'm not worried about cutting apart elements to use them for what I need. And then I did have lots of wood elements in my kit this month, and I found a bunch of butterflies, birds, feathers, bits like that kind of go with all of this layout. And then I have a Vicky Bouton embellishment pack that had mushrooms, and there happened to be a gnome in there. And so I'm using that gnome hat along with the mushrooms to add 3 pops of red around the page. And actually, the dog is wearing a scarf in the picture of the book cover, and so that's 1 more pop of red that helps kind of work around that triangle that I've created with those pops of red. And then just little bits and pieces here and there. There was a pin in that die cut embellishment pack, so I definitely wanted to add that because that all has to do with writing and storytelling. I am trying to add dimension by popping up some pieces and keeping some pieces more in the background. And once all of that is done, I am ready to add another element to this page. So I pull out some Nuvo drops in gold, and I am going to outline each of those wavy lines because I wanted to highlight that whimsical edge. I wanted to pull in some more gold because my journaling tag has that gold little title on it. And the gold is a theme in a lot of fairy tales. I think about the story of King Midas and the Golden Touch, Rumpelstiltskin, and the story of spinning the straw into gold. So all of that gold has this fairy tale-ness to it that I wanted to capture. And you can see I tried to save this for the end because I am a messy crafter, and inevitably I get smudges everywhere. And of course, even after saving it to the end, I still smudged. But it was no big deal. I got it fixed and cleaned up. So that will get set aside to dry. And while that dries, I do finish off my journaling tag. I'll give you one little bit of advice that I learned from practical experience here is that I use a pigment ink pad lines on this vellum and it bled. I would recommend more of something like a StazOn ink pad. So that is it for this one. We will take a couple of close-up looks at the final project here once it's all done and dry. I hope you got something useful out of this video, and if you did, I would appreciate a thumbs up because that does help my channel. And I hope you'll give this challenge a try over on the CKC blog, which is all linked below. You can find more of the design team's take on this challenge. And if you pop over to the Facebook community group, you can share your take on this challenge, as well as see all of the other counterfeiters and what they are working on for this challenge. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.